friends. I am Sanjay Mansukhani, a teacher of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Today is the last talk in the series of talks, and the topic for today is bondage and liberation. The entire yogic science and the entire samkhya wisdom is only present for one reason, and the reason is to remove all forms of human bondage, to give liberation to the human being. What is bondage and what is liberation? Let us look at it in some detail. Dear friends, man right from birth is born in bondage. Bondage to whom? Where is this source of bondage? This source of bondage is there in the mind. Mind is the prison in which every human being, right from birth till death, is held in bondage. There are only a very limited few who are able to break free of this prison and achieve absolute independence, liberation, kevalya, mukti, moksha, freedom. In the Hindu philosophy, moksha is considered to be one of the essential prerequisites for every individual. Moksha takes a human being to that stage in life where he becomes absolutely free, absolutely independent, absolutely liberated. So what becomes liberated? What becomes free? It is the Purusha, it is the Atma, it is the soul which gets liberated, which gets free. As I told you, my dear friends, it is the mind which holds the soul in prison. It is the body which holds the soul in prison. Only when one is able to understand that we are in bondage can we be free. Most of the people, a vast majority of the people on this planet, never realize that they are in bondage. They have been held slaves by their own mind. The mind is their master. They are not the master of the mind. And because of this, they endure suffering, they endure pain, they endure sorrow, they endure dukkha. So dear friends, the goal of yoga, the goal of samkhya is to free the soul from all causes of bondage, to free the soul from all causes of sorrow. And mind is the only cause of sorrow. Mind is the only cause of all pain. Mind is the only cause of all suffering. Mind traps you. Mind enslaves you. How to become free of the mind? This is the sadhana. This is the practice which is taught by yoga. This is learned from the philosophy of Sankhya. Sankhya Darshan by Kapila Muni says, when you get the complete knowledge, samkhya, sama means complete, khyati means knowledge. So when you get the complete knowledge, you become free, you become independent, you become liberated, you become in a state of moksha, nirvana, kevalya. And when you are not free, the only thing which you endure is pain, suffering, sorrow, and dukkha. Now the question is, what is this complete knowledge? Sankhya says, because of ignorance, because of avidya, because we do not know who we are trapped in bondage, we are trapped in sorrow. The question is who we really are. Dear friends, we are nothing but pure consciousness. And we are the Atma, we are the Purusha, we are the soul. We are not, please listen to my words carefully, we are not the body and mind complex. This body and mind complex is called Prakriti. This body and mind complex is a principle, is an entity, is a set of tattvas which constantly keep on changing, which can never be constant. Because the mind keeps on constantly changing, because the ego keeps on constantly changing, because the intellect keeps on constantly changing, because the senses keep on constantly changing. This is the cause of sorrow. These fluctuations of the mind, of the intellect, of the ego, of the senses. These fluctuations give rise to a combination of effects. These effects can be painful effects. These effects can be pleasurable effects. So if they are painful effects, they give you more pain. If they are pleasurable effects, even then they give you pain. Now, how is that possible? If they are pleasurable effects, pleasure cannot last forever. As we have seen, Prakriti keeps on constantly changing. That means the mind and its various entities, tattvas, principles keep on constantly changing. So when they keep on constantly changing, what is pleasurable now will become painful after some time. So whatever be the change in any principle and in any tattva of the mind, be it the intellect, be it the ego, be it the mind, be it the senses, it will constantly create pain and painful experiences. So mind is the source of all the pain. The mind is connected with the body. The body and mind are one living entity. This body also goes through constant change. This body is a body which only creates the untidy, unclean effects. If you look at a urine, it is not something pleasant. If you look at your shit, it is not something pleasant. If you look at your blood and you allow it to decay, it is not something pleasant. If you look at your sweat, smell your sweat, it is not something pleasant. If you look at your saliva, if you look at your cough, if you look at your whole body, it is constantly becoming unclean on its own. And all that it produces rots, decays, smells. So the body by itself is something which is unclean and impure. And the human being has to struggle to keep the body clean. We have to take a bath regularly. We have to apply soaps regularly. We use deodorants regularly. We use perfumes regularly. We use various kinds of cosmetics and makeup stuff to look beautiful. But this body constantly on its own as a natural process keeps on decaying, keeps on weakening, keeps on losing its shine. So both the mind and the body are sources of pain, are sources of sorrow. Let's look at the world now. The world of objects and people and matter and circumstances and situations outside. All that which is outside leads to pain, leads to sorrow, leads to suffering, leads to dukkha. If you remember Gautam Buddha, while he was a prince, he got rattled by all the suffering he saw outside in the world. Old age, death, poverty, etc. He got so disturbed, he left the palace, left his wife, left the family members, left the throne of the kingdom to inquire into the cause of sorrow and to find a solution for that sorrow. Sorrow is ever enduring. Sorrow is a constant accompaniment of all human existence. Each human being has a shadow, and each human being has sorrow following him like a shadow. You cannot ever run away from sorrow unless and until you understand the cause of sorrow, the source of sorrow, and end that sorrow at the source. So what is the cause of sorrow? What is the source of sorrow? As I told you, there is only one source, that is the human mind. So now the question is, how do you kill the mind? How do you stop the mind? How do you subdue the mind? Because the mind is the cause of all sorrow. So if the mind is gone, all sorrow goes. Then you are permanently happy. You reach a state of permanent bliss. It is even called Satchitananda, Paramananda, absolute happiness. So now the question is, how do you remove the mind? The one method which has been suggested by Samkhya is a very simple method: complete knowledge. Know that you are not the body and the mind combination. Know and realize that you are the Purusha, the eternal, infinite, permanent, constant, pure consciousness. And what you are not the fluctuating, changing, dynamic mind-body combination. You are not a product of space and time. You are beyond the dimensions of space and time. There is something inside you which is not the body and the mind. That something is the soul, is the spirit, is the Purusha, is the Atma. But we have been conditioned by our society. We have been conditioned by our parents, by our schooling system, by all that is happening around us into believing a false identity. And that false identity is, I am Sanjay Mansukhani. I identify myself with a name. I identify myself with a body. I identify myself with my caste. I identify myself with my nationality. I identify myself with my sex. I identify myself with my profession. I identify myself with my age. I identify myself with my height, with my weight, with my clothes, with my house, with my car, with my job, with my family members. So this whole paraphernalia of identification, which I carry in my head, which has been programmed into me by society, is false identity. And this is the complex false identity which gets stored in the mind. And that is why the mind traps you forever. It puts you inside a prison, inside a cell, and then you rot there till you realize you are not this identity. These are all man-given identities. These are all society-given identities. You are beyond this. So that journey starts when you start asking yourself the question, who am I? Where have I come from? Where am I going? When this self-inquiry starts, when you start asking the right questions, when you start the process of introspection, when you go through the scriptures, when you interact with people who are on the spiritual path, when you talk to those people who have expertise on the human mind and what it is all about, then slowly and steadily you start getting the right kind of knowledge. And then this knowledge becomes complete when you have been able to remove your avidya and you reach a state of vidya, when you reach a state of khyati, when you reach a state of discrimination, viveka, where you can identify who you are, where you do not identify yourself with the people of this world, with the objects of this world, with this world and its various paraphernalia. You identify yourself with something which is eternal, which is permanent, which is constant, which is infinite. Then you start realizing who you are. Then the process of self-realization begins. Then the process of Atma Darshan, Atma Sakshatkar begins. Then you see your own true self. Then you have a look at your Swarupa. And when all these processes start, you identify yourself with that soul, with that Atma, with that Purusha, with that true self. And that is when your wrong identification with the mind and body, with the objects and the people around you, with the false identifications you have picked up, stops, disappears. And this leads to liberation. This leads to independence. This leads to freedom. And while this process is on, dear friends, let me share with you the magic of what happens. As you go on a journey of self-discovery, as you realize who you truly are, you find that your mind keeps on expanding. You find your knowledge keeps on growing. You realize your ability to hold on to power increases. You realize you become a happy and happier person. You find that your health is improving. You find there is more love, more courage, more faith, more confidence in your life now. You find that there is an aura around you. You become a magnet and people get drawn to you. Whatever you start thinking about starts happening easily for you. You have a higher level of concentration. You have the ability to dig deep into any subject. You develop intuition. You develop sixth sense. You develop pragya. You develop pratibha. You develop extrasensory powers. You develop knowledge which is beyond the worldly knowledge. You get supernatural knowledge. The supernatural knowledge in turn gives you supernatural power. Now time slows down in your life. You don't get rattled by time. You don't get rattled by negative people, negative emotions, negative circumstances. Everything is smooth. Everything is fine. Everything is a beautiful flow in your life now. So when these symbols, these signs, these symptoms start happening in your life, that means you are on the right path, in the right direction, towards the right destination of liberation. Your prison of the mind is breaking apart. Your cell in which you have been trapped with sorrow, pain, and all the worldly unhappiness is slowly dissolving and disappearing. And as this dissolves and disappears, as the mind is no longer present now, you become pure consciousness. You become the pure Atma. You become the pure Purusha. Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras suggested 3 methods by which it can be done. As I told you, Sankhya says by complete knowledge you achieve this. But Patanjali in this Yoga Sutras talks about 3 specific techniques, methods by which liberation can be obtained permanently. Complete sorrow can be eliminated from human life. The mind can be decimated and destroyed forever. Number 1 method which Patanjali speaks about is detachment. He says, keep on detaching yourself constantly and consistently. As a practice, keep on detaching yourself constantly and consistently from objects of the world, from people of the world, from circumstances, from situations, from desires. So as you keep on working on this, as you keep on doing this slowly and steadily, you become free. You become free from the world around it. Your mind becomes free from the thoughts within it. Your mind becomes free from all desires, attachments, aversions. Your mind becomes free from fear. Your mind becomes free from the ego. As this freedom keeps on happening, as this detachment keeps on happening, the mind gets knowledge. The mind gets flooded with knowledge beyond the sensory world. The knowledge of the other dimensions start appearing. And this leads to complete knowledge. This removes all the ignorance you had at birth. And this causes liberation. The second method is the method of concentration. If you concentrate your mind, then you will find initially your mind was busy with the objects and people outside. The mind was roaming outside aimlessly. The mind was multi-pointed outside. So when you start the process of concentration, you slowly pull it in. And when the mind comes in at one place, you further practice, you bring it at one point. With further practice, further abhyas, the mind becomes so pointed that it disappears. Now when the mind disappears is the time when you are able to see yourself. You get a look at your Swarupa. You have a Atma Darshan. You go through a process of self-realization. You have Atma Sakshatkar. So, by concentration also, one can move the mind away from the scene. But the moment you're out of concentration, you are again out into the world. Again, the mind is moving around. Again, the mind is multi-pointed. So you practice again, every day, every time possible, consistently, persistently, over long periods of time, without interruption. When you keep on doing it again and again and again and again with intensity, with faith, with memory, then you will find the mind has now developed the habit of being concentrated, being one-pointed, and all on the inside. Now when the mind is fully in the inside, one-pointed, the power of the mind has drastically reduced, in the sense it is not any longer multi-pointed, it is single-pointed. It is highly concentrated. So now whatever you do with so much of mental power. You are able to dig so deep that knowledge simply flows. Knowledge flows in as if all the floodgates of knowledge have opened up for you. And again, ignorance goes away completely. And again, you come to the realization that you are not the mind and the body. You are not the wrong identification you have believed yourself to be all this long. You are that pure consciousness. You are the soul. You are the Purusha. You are the Atma. The third method, which Patanjali speaks, to come out of bondage and to go into liberation permanently, is called Ishvara Pranidhana. Ishvara Pranidhana means commitment to Ishvara, devotion to Ishvara, surrender to Ishvara, Sharanagati to Ishvara, Samarpana to Ishvara, Bhakti to Ishvara. Once when you do this, your mind becomes one-pointed. Second, Ishvara has been defined in a way by Patanjali. Patanjali says Ishvara is a supreme soul. So he is above other souls. Other souls are in Prakriti, are in the mind-body combination, and they come out of it. They free themselves, they liberate themselves from the mind-body combination. But Ishvara does not come through the Prakriti route, though he is a supreme soul. He is a soul, supreme one. He comes directly. So this Ishvara is not having any sanskaras, any karmic account, any kleshas, any cause for obstacles to yoga. He is above Prakriti. So when he is above Prakriti, and when you are from Prakriti focusing on some entity, Ishvara above Prakriti, one-pointedly, you get pulled out of Prakriti. You get liberated from Prakriti. You get free from Prakriti. And this Ishvara is also the source of all knowledge. So when you are concentrating on Ishvara, or when you are repeating his name, Patanjali says the mystic sound, symbol Om represents Ishvara. It becomes easy for you to go on to Ishvara. Om is the alamban, the support to reach out to Ishvara, to the concept of Ishvara. So Ishvara is the source of all knowledge, unsurpassed knowledge. Nobody can surpass the knowledge of Ishvara. No yogi can. Ishvara has the highest knowledge. So when you chant Om, when you listen to Om, you find that you have your doors open now to knowledge which is originating from Ishvara, to knowledge which is beyond this world, to knowledge which is beyond the five senses, to knowledge which is based on intuition, insight, sixth sense, pragya, pratibha, viveka, viveka khyati. Now all this knowledge will come to you because Ishvara is the Adi Guru, the eternal ancient Guru, and you are his disciple. All the knowledge which has come to humanity has come through Ishvara. So this knowledge is bound to come to you since you have a commitment to Ishvara. You are devoted to Ishvara. You have surrendered to Ishvara. So complete knowledge will come to you through the channel of Ishvara. Once that complete knowledge dawns on you, then you again realize who you are. You realize you are that Purusha, that Atma, that soul, pure consciousness. You are eternal. You are infinite. You are unchanging, non-changing. You are not the mind and body combination. You are not the false identifications which you have picked up. You are not an entity who is in space and time. The body and the mind are in space and time. You are beyond all. And then liberation happens. Then mukti happens, moksha happens, nirvana happens, kevalya happens. You are free. You are free forever now. This freedom is such a freedom that you become free from all birth and death. There is no rebirth now. Because the mind has come to a stop. The chitta has gone. There is no record of the kleshas, of the karmas, of the sanskaras, of the vrittis. So there is no scope to find a new body now. There is no scope to have a new birth. The flow of life, the flow of birth and rebirth stops forever. So as per both Sankhya and Yoga, this is liberation, this is freedom from bondage. There is bondage to the body, there is bondage to the mind, and this bondage brings us again and again in this existence. We keep on changing our bodies. We keep on going through pain, suffering, sorrow. But once we are able to decimate the mind, kill the mind, dissolve the mind, free the mind, then we become free, liberated, in kevalya, in moksha, in nirvana. And there is no birth after this. And knowledge is at the peak. Power is at the peak. Happiness is at the peak. So this is the ultimate stage of human existence. And any one of us can reach this ultimate stage of human existence in one lifetime, provided you follow the process, the method, the sadhana given by Kapila Muni and also by Patanjali. So dear friends, with this we come to the end of the series of talks. The objective of this series of talks was to familiarize you with the principles involved so that you could learn how to achieve permanent happiness in your life and teach the same to the members of your family, people from your society, your country, and the world at large. And once we are able to do it jointly, once we use this yogic healing and we heal the world together, all of us will have a happy planet. And this happy planet can then be gifted, can be passed on to our coming generations. So that is the goal of all these series of talks. And I'm sure you have gained tremendously from this. Today is the last day. With this, we come to the end, the conclusion. I wish all of you that you are able to achieve moksha, kevalya, freedom, liberation in this lifetime itself. And your ability to find permanent happiness is shared with other people in our world. And we will be able to create jointly a happy planet for ourselves and for our coming generations. Thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you so much for being here, listening to us. May it all happen in the shortest possible time. We are looking forward to this transformation of our planet by 2035. So let us pray to the Almighty, to Ishvara, that it may happen sooner than 2035. Thank you. Thank you so much. God bless you.